understand what are world religions, how are they related to extraterrestrial contact, we've got to begin by going to these creation myths. These are myths based on the idea of a primordial void or the primordial waters or even a primordial chaos. Now, this is something you find in virtually all the religious traditions, indigenous traditions as well. There is this great void at the beginning of time, the great waters, and out of these waters, out of this void, the first gods suddenly emerge. And these are beings that have great power, and they, at the inception of this kind of primordial history, they are the only ones around, these primordial gods. And they are described in all these religious traditions as the creator gods. So the very first, the oldest recorded creation story is the Enuma Elish. And in this creation story, in the Enuma Elish, it describes the creation of the gods, or these are creator gods. The first creator gods that emerged out of the waters in the Sumerian records, in the Enuma Elish, were Apsu and Tiamat. And then they go on to create a series of gods that ultimately created humanity as a slave race. The Enuma Elish was first transmitted orally from generation to generation, from Sumeria, and then eventually it went through Acadia, the Babylonians, and it was recorded in text in Babylonian around 1900 BC. And even though the original was from Sumer, though that is the original creation story. So it had a number of tablets. So I want to spend a little bit of time describing the tablets, the Sumerian records of the Enuma Elish as they've been recorded, because these give us the basic outline of a pattern that repeats itself again and again in other great traditions. So the very first tablet in the Enuma Elish, this is what it says: before the heavens had been named, before the earth below had been named, none but Apsu, the All-Father, oldest of beings, and Mumu Tiamat, mother who bore them, existed. The gods were then created within the waters of Apsu Tiamat. So there you have the reference to the waters, and Apsu and Tiamat being the first gods that emerged out of the waters, and then they, through their creative ability, create offspring. So this is the pattern that emerges in other religious traditions. So the Enuma Elish describes this. So the gods that are birthed by the Apsu and Tiamat, eventually they begin to quarrel amongst one another. And so there's a war against Apsu, the first primordial god, the All-Father, if you like. So Tiamat, their mother, became troubled by her children, the gods. Her still depths became agitated. So there's the reference to Tiamat representing the primordial waters. Whether we're talking about the great oceans out of which the first aquatic life emerged, intelligent aquatic life, or some other primordial waters, it's not quite clear. But I think when we think about the emergence of intelligent life on Earth, we can't discount the idea that intelligent life didn't so much come from the stars, but may have emerged fully formed out of the waters, out of the great oceans. So I'll explain a little bit more about that shortly. So the gods are created by Apsu and Tiamat, and so there's a lot of turmoil. Apsu, the first All-Father, could not calm the gods. Tiamat became angry. So then the gods go to war against Apsu. So Apsu is now the bad guy, because even though he's the All-Father that created the gods gods that were created by him are very upset for one reason or another, and so then war emerged. Then did war rage between Ea, Enki. Now, very interesting, I just learned this, that Enki actually in Sumerian means custodian or master of earth. En means custodian or master. Ki is the Sumerian for earth. Now, Enki is a title for the master or custodian of earth. And the very first custodian was Ea, one of the creator gods, Ea, that's how I will pronounce it. So Ea is actually Enki. So Enki is a title, but Ea is Enki as we understand him today. So Enki is the defender of the gods, and his father is Apsu. And the brother of Apsu is Mumul. And so there's a war that does rage between them. So the second tablet describes Tiamat finished the monsters she had been creating to set upon her children, the gods. She did this evil deed to avenge the murder of Apsu. So Apsu is killed in this war between the creator gods. So Apsu is killed. Tiamat is now upset. And so she unleashes her hordes, her primordial hordes, monsters, whatever beings that she's in control of, to avenge the murder of her consort, Apsu. So you can see the big dragon there, the kind of representation of those draconian energies. So Tiamat goes to war against the gods led by Enki and the others that work with him that defeated and supplanted Apsu. So the second tablet continues. Nowhere is there a god who can defeat Tiamat. Tiamat will destroy all who try. Lord Anshar, speaking forcefully, said, "He whose strength is mighty shall be our avenger, the great warrior Marduk, the hero." So apparently, of all of the gods, the only one that has the power to defeat Tiamat is Marduk, the son of Enki. So Marduk also, you can see he's also got these dragon energies associated with him. So there is this great battle between one group of gods led by Tiamat and another group of gods led by Marduk. And interestingly, Marduk is given authority by an assembly. So the gods have an assembly, and somehow they have to give Marduk some authority. They have to acquiesce to Marduk being allowed to use certain powers, which it will enable him to then slay Tiamat. So the tablet goes on. He told of Anu's failure. So apparently Anu is the father of Enki and the father of Enlil, who we'll talk about soon. And Enki, of course, is the father of Marduk. So Anu is one of the creator gods. He tried to appease Tiamat with diplomacy, and he failed. And so now it's up to Marduk using warfare to defeat Tiamat. And the new hero Marduk, who needed the supreme power which only the assembly of the gods could give him in order that he might slay Tiamat. So that's a typo down there. So that's he might slay Tiamat. So, but the interesting thing here in this tablet is that Marduk needed the supreme power which only the assembly of the gods could give him. So right here you have a recurring theme in the literature, in the ancient literatures concerning the gods, is that there is an assembly. And it's this assembly which confers power on any one god to be able to do anything. So there's no one all-powerful god here. It's really just a succession of creator gods who vie against each other, and they have an assembly where they can meet and they can discuss and come up with plans and solutions and authorize one of them to take the lead in one area or another. And that's a pattern that repeats again and again. So Marduk is given authority by the assembly of gods. And the tablet goes on. All these great gods who controlled destinies came before Anshar. They entered the assembly hall named Ubushinkina. So that's a representation of the assembly. So that's the important point that I want to emphasize here, because later on we'll be talking a lot about these different assemblies and what that means today. So the primordial waters, what I think that refers to is that there was a war between ocean and surface dwelling civilizations. That this kind of history of different creator gods coming along and establishing a presence and establishing assemblies and having offspring, eventually they establish dwellings or habitats on the earth. And I think one of these wars, probably the first one, the war against Tiamat and Apsu, represented the first, this war of the gods between ocean dwellers and surface dwellers. That Tiamat and Apsu represented the ocean dwelling gods, and that Anu, Enlil, and Enki represented the surface dwelling gods.